Okay, so let's continue our online order here. So we've got a couple other things that I wanted to take a look at. So first, we want to know what's the maximum, minimum, and average price per item. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do some new commands. These are ones that we'll see a lot. First one is average, and I was spelling it incorrectly. And you can always start typing them in, then just double click on the thing if you want to activate the equation. So what's average going to do? That's just going to take everything and give you the mean of the items. So I'm just going to average everything that we've bought. And there we go. So my average price is going to be $120.18. I want to know the maximum price. So we have a function called max, and it's going to give us the largest value in a series. And so we'll just type max, type that thing in. The largest item is $199.99. This function really gets important as we're dealing with very large series of numbers. You know, if you've got 5,000 or 6,000 data points sitting there, you just want to know what the biggest one is. You don't want to sit there and have to look through it. You just run the function. And the inverse of max is the minimum function, min, and it will do the same thing. And it will return what the minimum value is. And so that can change as we're going. So let's take our fleece jackets to 6. And there we go. The average changes, the max changes, the min changes. And so once again, the reason that we're building this is to build all this intelligence into things to get an automated system that's going to work for us under any situation. So now we want to sit here and go, how many items are priced over blank per unit? And so $25 per unit, $50 per unit. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have another function. There's a whole series of count functions. So you can count the number of cells in a range, count the number of instances, count the number of blanks, and you've got Countif and Countifs, which add some kind of modifier to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to use Countif, which is going to give us, we're going to count the number of things that satisfy a function. And so as you can see over here, there are numerous different things. There's Countif, SumIf, AverageIf, which is the same thing. Okay, sum these numbers if this condition is valid. So you can sit there and say, well, sum everything up of everything that's above $25 or everything below $25. It doesn't really matter what the thing's going to be. And so what we're going to do is not put something from another workbook in, is we're going to take a look at a different function of how we're going to do things. Because we're going to have to put things together in a certain way. And I just clicked off that, so Countif. And so now what I want to do is I want to look at a range of items. And so I'm going to look at this range of items here, B2 through B6. And I am going to drag this, I'm going to set this equation up so I can drag it. So I am going to, I can either hit F4 and lock everything in, or why don't we name this? So let's talk about names. And so I can highlight everything in here, and I can give that entire array a name. And so I'm going to highlight everything, including this unit price name up here, and then I'm going to go into formulas, and then in this name manager, now I click on name manager, I can do this all manually, or I can, there's this really cool button here, create from selection. And so now create from selection, and then it goes create a name for the values in the top row. What does that mean? It means, oh, I've got an array picked here. I have words up here. Excel recognizes it, goes, okay, everything here's a number. You've got a word there. And so I'm going to create a name based off that word. So if I hit OK, what happens now, notice if I highlight all of this, it's now given the name unit price. We can't have spaces in our names, so we get underscores. And actually, since we're here, let's say that I wanted to name all of these prices by these names. I can go the same thing, create from selection. And once again, it goes, oh, you've got words here on the left, so we'll put those in. And so now what happens is that individual cell is headlamp, that's fleece jacket, that's hiking shorts, and you can usually come over here and go range names. And what I can do is go here to use in formula, paste names, and paste the entire list. We'll double click on that and double click on that to make it as big as possible. And all this does is everything, these are called range names, the way that I've named these things. So here's all of the range names I've defined, and then it tells me what it corresponds to. It's usually nice to put these into worksheets because somebody that's looking at it can look at it and go, oh, okay, I know, I can see that there's some stuff named and I can use it. The nice thing about range names is they don't index. So let's go back here once again, Countif, and I didn't spell it right. You can tell that you're not spelling it right if the thing goes away. The range, so if I select this range right here, notice it fills in the range name, which is the unit price. Okay, so I want the criteria. So the criteria for this is I basically want to put together an equation that says I want to know if it's greater than this cell A18. So this one's going to be a little bit goofy. So I'm going to use parentheses, and what parentheses are going to allow me to do is it's going to print what's in the parentheses. So basically what we're doing is we're telling Excel that we are constructing an equation basically from parts. So I want to do parentheses greater than. And then what I want to put in is I want to put in A18. Now if I just put in A18, and we'll type it in, A18, it's going to tell me that I don't really have a formula there. Because the thing is, Excel doesn't recognize just dropping that in, because it's like, wait a second, this is some weird text strip. So what you have to do is you put in the ampersand, which is Shift 7. That's the name of the little and symbol. And so what that does is that basically takes out the space in there. Now if we hit it, Excel goes, okay, so I understand what you're trying to do now. Now this is kind of, it might take you a little while to get used to this notation, but this is the way that we do it. So now it's going to Countif. It's going to go through everything in unit price, which is the blue. And then we've constructed this equation that says greater than A18. And so now it's going to count the number of things that are greater than $25, which is 3. 1, 2, and 3. Oh yeah, headlamps under $25. What am I doing? 1, 2, and 3. So that's all good. So what about $50? So we can do the same thing. And since I've created this equation in such a way, the A18 will index, the unit price will not. I can drag this down. And now if I look at it, it goes, okay, now I'm going to look through that and find out what's greater than $50. And so it's 2 items. And so now I've got that all put in. So let's do the last thing. Let's do a lookup of what's the unit price of sleeping bags. Yeah, I can look up there and see it's $69, but once again, I want to code it using my VLOOKUP. Now, this time, we've got words and not numbers, but we kind of code in the VLOOKUP the same way. So we have VLOOKUP, which is our vertical lookup. And so now, what am I looking for? Well, I'm looking for sleeping bags. Now, sleeping bags is a word, not a number, and that's going to be important because now we can't have an approximate thing. We have to have an exact thing looking for sleeping bags. And so now our table array, we didn't create this as an array, but we'll pick everything from this entire list. And why am I going to table array this entire list? Because who knows, maybe I want to eventually look up total prices and whatnot too. But I want to return the unit price. Well, the unit price is column 1, that's column 2, so I'll type in 2. Now this time I want it to be false because I want an exact match. So that brings $69.99. So if I change this to sleeping bag, we get a not available. What does that mean? Well, there's nothing there that's a sleeping bag. But we do have sleeping bags. Okay, so let's see. Do I want to? Let me show you one more thing. Now, what if I want to set this up? Because, I mean, as you saw, if I go to sleeping bag, things gets messed up. What if I wanted to force this cell to just be one of these choices here? I can do that. And actually it'll bring a little drop down button so you can pick one of those. So if I go up here into the data tab and I go to data validation under the data tools and click on it and say data validation, I can say settings. Well, right now I can put any value I want in there. So I want to change that to a list. So I'm going to the data that's going to be in that cell is only going to be a list that I'm going to define here. So if I go to source and click on the little, you'll see this a lot of Excel, these little arrows allow you to just go to a selection tool. And so I'm going to say that those are the only values that can end up in that cell. And I hit OK. Now notice when I click on that cell, I've got a little drop down button. So I can sit there and I can just pick one of those values. Okay, what's a fleece jacket? Boom, and then it executes that equation of VLOOKUP. And the nice thing about this is I can sit there and I force it to only allow things that are going in there, but I can't, it'll stop me from trying to change it to something that's not allowed because it doesn't match the data validation restrictions. So what happens if I want to add something in there? Well, if I insert it at the bottom, then it just, you have to go and redefine it. But if you insert it in the middle, so let's go in here and just go, I'm going to insert a new line, insert, I'm going to shift the cells down, and let's just say, okay, well, I'm going to add flags, and they're $4.99, and buy one of them, and I can drag this down to have the equation fills in. Well, now, if you notice, flag shows up. Because since the data validation was between A2 and at the time A7, since I've added something in the middle of that, Excel's smart enough to go, oh, okay, you're just expanding that out. I'll drop that just into that list. So now you can data validation and go flag, and everything works out fine. So that's just another way to kind of key it in to where somebody can't make a mistake while doing things, because you can't type in sleeping bag and have a error pop up because there's nothing in the list. And that forces someone to choose things that are in the list.